Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Gonna have a bit of a discussion video with you today, and I think this will be a lot of fun. Certainly, let me say I had a lot of fun compiling this and thinking back about what some of you guys said. So yeah, this video is going to be covering your responses to a question I asked about a week ago. So back then, I was doing a video about the early knives on the channel, and within that discussion, that by the way was responding to an open tag from Patty's Potato Peelers. But within that discussion, I asked the question, what was the knife that kind of got you into the hobby? All right. And for me, I shared that it was the Rat 1. This was the first knife, not this particular one, but this was the first model that I actually researched and spent time watching reviews and comparing to other things that I might also want and ultimately decided on. Okay, so that was kind of the first knife for me that was that where I started watching videos and comparison shopping and really weighing a number of options before I picked it. And so I was asking you guys about the same thing. By the way, there are a number of other stories. You may want to go and watch that previous video because I kind of tell the whole, I don't know, I talk about a number of different things that happened at the beginning. But I asked you guys the same question and I got a lot of responses, which was really, really fun. And so first of all, let me say, making this video is just a happy, response. The real fun of this was hearing you guys talk about the first knife that kind of really got you excited about knives. That was super fun, guys, and it was, over the last week or so, and then even today again, and yesterday when I was compiling results, I sort of, I don't know, I just really enjoyed that feeling of, getting people to share what knife really got them excited. And I think that's the thing that kind of holds us together as a community. The thing that we all share in common is this level of excitement that we have in response to something as kind of boring and mundane as a folding knife, just something that everyone has floating around in their pocket. But it was really cool to sort of see that how many other people shared that level of excitement and could really get into something. And so thanks a lot for sharing all your results. And I had a ton of fun reading through those. And so hopefully you'll have a little bit of that fun just kind of hearing about some of the results that I got from this little very casual survey. All right. So the next thing that we want to talk about is that well, by the way, let me just say a couple that stood out before I move on from this point. There were a couple of you guys who, got Buck 110s when they first came out and got, Spyderco Enduras when they were brand new, or got other Spydercos or Benchmades like back in the 90s when these companies were brand new. And I think that is so cool. And I'm kind of jealous of those of you who had that experience to try something out. Imagine, being there when Spyderco first kind of became popular and having one of those early models. So that I think was really cool, and I really thank you for sharing that because that was the funnest part of this whole process. So now let me move on, because one of the things that I went ahead and did was to ask some of the knife YouTubers that I have regular contact with to share with me, and actually a few others as well, but to share with me what knife got them into the hobby. And again, I clarified for them like we have here. It wasn't just the first knife that you happened to buy. It was the knife that really got you excited, that got you kind of, researching and watching videos and all that kind of stuff. All right. And so I wanted to share some of those with you to get us going here, starting off with, and these are in no particular order, I just happened to write these down in my notes as I saw the responses come in. By the way, let me say this up front. If you responded, if we're friends on Instagram and we're talking all the time and you responded to this question and I missed it, I apologize in advance. I did try to go back through a couple of discussion threads and see if I missed anything, and anyway, there's a good chance that I've missed somebody's response. Just know that I'm not leaving you out on purpose. It's just my own lack of organization. But now I'll share with you Advanced Knife Bro. For him, it was a Spyderco Endura. So Spyderco Endura, actually a number of you guys said that, and there were a couple of guys who got Enduras like back when they first came out, when it was a Clip It. That is so cool. Anyway, Advanced Knife Bro picked the Endura as his first knife, and I thought when he told me that, I was like, the big thing I remember about the Endura is watching a couple videos where people got them to fail by batoning with them, and Advanced Knife Bro just loves to baton with every knife he touches. So I'm not sure if that was the best choice for him. I suppose it should have been a fixed blade, really. Eugene Kwan, Mkusta Tactility. Now, this was odd. It was actually almost weird to hear Eugene share that it was a regular production knife. I so closely associate him and his channel with higher end pieces, custom knives, mid-tech knives, limited production or high-end production stuff, that for him to just say, yeah, an Mkusta that what I think those tactilities probably go for 80 or 90 bucks, something like that, was a little shocking. I was like, Eugene, I didn't even know you knew about production knives. I thought you were just all about the high-end stuff. But that's what got him started. Pete over at Cedric Nada Gear and Outdoors, that was the Spyderco Delica. Um, Interesting that I can't remember what video it was I was watching from him recently, but he pulled out two Delicas, and I don't know, Pete, if you happen to watch this, let me know. Is one of the Delicas you still have the original one that you picked up? Oh yeah, one of the guys that responded. So I don't know if you guys follow this website, but Journey Wind Junk is a great website. It's sort of a blog format. Great website, but he was talking about the fact that he got a Rat 2 and a Spyderco Dragonfly. So two small knives, and I don't think his taste has changed much. I've got to say, back at the beginning of my interest, I liked small knives, and I had like I had the Tenacious, but I also had the Persistence and the Amplitude, I think. I'm probably getting that one wrong. It's not I think Kershaw's the Amplitude. But anyway, there were a couple of similar Spydercos. They're like the Tenacious, but a bit smaller, that I tried at the beginning, which kind of taught me that I wasn't that into small knives. So kind of interesting that the first couple of knives he had were smaller on the size scale as well. Nick Shabazz. Now this was an interesting story. Nick told me his first knife, the first knife that really that was exciting to him, that got him into the hobby, was the Benchmade Emissary. And I don't know, this is a weird one. I guess it does kind of fit. To me, the Emissary is sort of a gentleman's knife. It's not very big. It's really, really nicely done. It's a beautiful knife. I have to give credit. The Benchmade Emissary is probably the prettiest Benchmade out there. And I don't know, Nick seems to like those gentleman style knives, so it probably suits his tastes pretty well. I don't know if he would pick one today given the assist. That was the other thing about the Emissary. The assist on that thing, like, fired like a rocket. The Benchmade Emissary is such a firm assist, and Benchmades generally do. I love the way they do their assisted knives. Moving on, last but not least, and I'm sorry if I forgot anyone, because I know there are a couple of others that I regularly talk to that I don't have here. So if I forgot you, yeah, Dr. Funky's a good example. I don't have anything for you, Frank. But anyway, Slicey Dicey, the Manix 2 lightweight. And Brian and I have very similar taste in knives. There are very few reviewers who I trust. What's the word? Let's put it this way. There are very few reviewers who, if they just give a general statement, hey, I really like this knife, I take that as I will probably like it too. Okay, my tastes are a little bit different, and I know that. But the two that probably stand out to me as, hey, if he likes it, I better give it a try. One is Brian, although he does like smaller stuff than me. So when he says, this has a 2.5-inch blade, I really like it, I pass on those, I do. But if he's reviewing a larger knife that's in my size, in my wheelhouse for size, I give his opinion a lot of weight. The other one is Rob, the Apostle P. Now, those are not the only YouTubers I watch. I still watch other guys for different reasons, and I interpret their videos based on what I know about their tastes. So to pick on Nick for a second, if he says a knife is too big, then I know I'll probably like it. It's right. then it's, that's a knife that's going to connect with me. And so those are the first knives that those guys picked. Again, Manix 2 lightweight, such a great knife. So man, and Brian jumped right in, to the deep end. I was trying out the cheap stuff for the first little while. Anyway, now that we're done with those guys, I hope that's of interest to you. And by the way, if you're a YouTuber watching this, I didn't leave you out on purpose. I just mentioned it to people I happen to be in contact with for some reason. So don't feel offended by that. If we're friends and we regularly talk, it wasn't that I purposely left anyone out. It's just I didn't go out of my way to talk to every single knife reviewer and see what they had. But if you're watching and you want to respond, I would welcome it. So I'd love to hear down in the comments what your first knife was. Now, guys, here's what I want you to do next. I'm going to pause for a second. I really won't, but pause the video, okay, and think about this. How do you think this is going to play out? So remember, I've gotten, I don't know, 150 responses or something like that. And so I just kind of took them all, wrote them down, and counted everything up. Okay. So I'd love to hear you guys share with me what you think is going to happen here. Which companies do you think are going to be at the top of the list? Which aren't going to make the list at all? So make your predictions now before I get into sharing the whole list with you. All right. So again, what are your predictions about which companies are going to fare the best here? Okay, and I'll begin by telling you the two models. And I was really surprised by this because these two models, being the first knife that really got someone into the hobby, were pretty surprising to me. Actually, yeah, let's share this. Sorry, I don't want to be all over the place too much, but the Spyderco Delica, I think there were a good number of Spyderco Delicas. In fact, about 5% of the people who responded said that the Delica was their first good, what they thought of as like a good EDC knife, the first knife that they really did research on and picked something they thought was going to be awesome. That was the Spyderco Delica. Second, right behind it, was the Paramilitary 2. All right, so those two knives, and I think there was around the same amount, about 5% said Delica and PM2. So that means just between those two models, that makes up 10% of the respondents right there. All right, now that was pretty interesting to me, and I was surprised the Delica did as well. The Para 2, I don't know, I kind of expected that one, but maybe because, anyway, I'm not gonna try to comment on every single one of these. Let's go ahead and just share the results. So when it came down to brands, and there were too many individual models mentioned, okay, but when it came down to brands, Spyderco did by far the best. All right, so I've already mentioned the Para 2 and the Delica, but 30% of you that responded, okay, I feel like, that show where you have to pick the answers. 100 people said, anyway, 30% said that their first good knife, the first knife that they really were excited about, that was sort of part of the hobby, if you will, was a Spyderco. And you know what? I was actually a little bit surprised by that. I thought that Benchmade would be first because I don't know, maybe it's different in the States. Maybe, I just haven't traveled enough. But for me, it seems like if you go into like Cabela's and Bass Pro and some of the bigger outdoor shop, Gander Mountain, stuff like that, it always seems to me that Benchmades are really, really well represented and sort of marketed as the premium knives. And so to me, I would have thought that most people's first foray into nicer knives would be Benchmade, but apparently not. Spyderco wins the day. Now, Benchmade did come in second, but it's a far second. Only 11% said Benchmade was their first foray. And the other surprising thing to me was that I was like, well, it's got to be mostly Benchmade Griptilians or mini Griptilians, but it wasn't. It was all over the place. Like I can't even give you, I think I had one person mention a Griptilian, one person a mini grip, and the rest were just various Benchmade models, some that I haven't even heard of. So Benchmade did okay, but not nearly as well as Spyderco. So that surprised me. And I wonder if perhaps we as reviewers or, as the community elevate Spyderco. I don't know, whatever the case may be. So Spyderco, Benchmade. The next one up was Kershaw. And this one was surprising to me. I guess not so surprising. I only have a ZT here. I don't even have any Kershaws around right now, but this was, of course, there's the Kershaw Amplitude, I think, or anyway, there's a Kershaw model of this same design. So this guy can represent. But Kershaw, yeah, was a little lower than Benchmade at around 9%. And I'm not too surprised about that because I feel like, Kershaw is like the upper side of the Walmart department store knife brands. If you're in Walmart, you're going to pick something a little bit better. Or if you're watching knife reviews and the next time you're in a store, you go, yeah, that is a nice knife. I'd like to find one. There's a good chance that you'll walk into a Walmart and you'll find a Kershaw or a CRKT. And CRKT was actually next on the list. So I'll throw in, I've got the linchpin right here. So CRKT was next on the list, and this one made a little bit more sense to me because, and honestly, guys, I figured CRKT would be higher, and uh, they, if when you really get into knives, I think you start to, change your understanding. But when I was first into this and I was doing my early reviews, I loved CRKT. A couple of reasons. One, they're decent quality. Yes, they have some hiccups from time to time, but generally speaking, they're decently well made. They don't use very good steel, but at that time it was like, hey, these are decent budget steels, and they were using back then. There weren't as many CRKTs and 8CR13 MOV. Now it's like that's all they use. As I say this, I've got one in front of the camera that isn't one. But back then they used a lot of AUS-8, and the AUS-8 they seem to do a really good job with. So anyway, CRKT made sense to me. Now, the bottom, like the rest of the lineup is not, I mean, there's just 5 different ones, but Buck came in, at 4%, Cold Steel at 3%, Gerber 3%, SOG 3%. All right. And those were ever after that, it was all just like one-offs. One person might have said, I think there might have been 2 people that said a Rat Model 1, and a couple people said, an SE, but there was nothing else that stood out to be a big enough percentage to mention to you guys. So the first thing is, what do you think of the list? All right, so again, 30% Spyderco, 11% Benchmade, 9% Kershaw, 9% CRKT, 4% Buck, 3% Cold Steel, 3% Gerber, 3% SOG. All right. And the highest models that were represented were the Spyderco Para 2. Guess I should have a Para 2 out when I'm going to say that. The Para 2 and the Delica. Now, the other thing that surprised me, let me actually move these guys out of the way for a second. The other thing that surprised me were the number of people that jumped straight into the deep end of the pool. So there were, 3 or 4. There were a small number, but more than I anticipated, said zero tolerance. Right, so you think, before you're carrying, I don't know, gas station knives, or you don't even carry a knife, and then you don't even stop to to check out a Benchmade or a Spyderco. You just go straight to something that costs $200 or $300. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I really didn't expect to see zero tolerance on this list, but they showed up a few times. Other ones, a couple people said they bought a custom right off the bat. A couple people, if you follow Tiger Claw 1513 or 1315 or something like that on Instagram, the first knife he bought was like a Spyderco Nirvana. I was like, what? And I'm sure there are some of you out there who are like that, but it makes me think of someone who starts to get into watches and they're just like, forget everything else. I'm just going to go buy a Rolex. I'm sure, there are some people out there, and perhaps if you're, what would you say? If your tastes always run toward the high end, maybe anything you're buying, you do some research and find out what the higher end options are and go that way. So I'm sure that happens. There was one guy that said he bought a custom, an Andre Thornburn custom right away because he wanted to he wanted to show up his friend that was always giving him a hard time about knives. So I thought that was pretty funny as well. So the one thing that, I have a bad habit of speculating. And as I looked at all these, one thing that stands out to me is I wonder if 5 years from now, if I ask this question again, a lot of people would say, a bunch of overseas brands. Notice that there are no WE knives, there are no Civivis, there are no Bestecs, there are no Kaisers, there are none of that stuff. Nothing overseas, or I guess a lot of these are made overseas, but no overseas brands actually made the list. I found that a little surprising, and I suspect, as I say, that that'll be different the next time I did this. If I asked again 5 years from now, it would probably be different responses because there are so many. Overseas makers out there that are doing such a good job. Now that actually leads to a different video that I'm going to probably talk about. I do want to talk about the market sort of being flooded with overseas produced knives, and the challenge that represents as a reviewer and even as a buyer. But for now, I want to thank you guys for responding. It was so much fun hearing all your stories. I'd love to hear anything you want to share in the comments about, further stories you have, because, it's just really interesting to share that excitement that we all can identify with as a community. All right, so thanks a lot. I hope you enjoy the video. Do check my links out. I'll put a link to my Amazon store as well as my discount code partners, which are Southern Edge Knife Works. You can get 15% off using my discount code Sharp Stuff. Sorry about that, Canadians. It doesn't work. You get the discount, but you don't get free shipping. And also White Mountain Knives, 10% off using that same Sharp Stuff discount code. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.